Before we talk about the islands, the names, or the networks, we have to talk about the moment everything should have ended and didn't. The moment the justice system had Jeffrey Epstein dead to rights and chose to protect him instead of the victims. Because if you really want to understand how deep this goes, you don't start with the crime. You start with the deal. In 2006, the FBI conducted one of the most thorough trafficking investigations in modern history. Over 30 victims' sworn statements, physical evidence, witness testimonies, corroborating details, everything prosecutors normally need for a slam dunk federal case. Any ordinary American would have been charged with multiple felonies, denied bail, and sentenced to decades in prison. But Jeffrey Epstein wasn't an ordinary American. He had wealth. He had intelligence ties. He had political connections. He had leverage. And for men like that, the justice system doesn't collapse by accident. It bends on purpose. So let's break down what actually happened. Federal prosecutors were preparing charges that could have put Epstein away for life. Trafficking minors, conspiracy, multiple counts across multiple jurisdictions, a massive criminal enterprise. But before those charges could be filed, something highly unusual happened. Defense attorneys for Epstein, some of the most connected lawyers in the country, bypassed local prosecutors entirely and went straight to the top. They contacted the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, Alexander Acosta, a rising political figure at the time, a man with ambitions beyond his office, and suddenly a case that should have been straightforward became something else entirely. Here's what we know from Acosta's own testimony years later. He was told directly or indirectly that Epstein belonged to intelligence and was above his pay grade. Think about that. A federal prosecutor admitting that he was essentially told, back off. Whether that statement was literal or just excuse that justified the decision, the outcome was the same. The prosecution folded, the victims were sidelined, and Epstein was handed the most generous plea deal in modern American history. Let's talk about that deal, because it wasn't just lenient, it was designed to protect the entire network. Epstein was allowed to plead a reduced state charge. No federal, no trafficking, not conspiracy, a single state level charge of solicitation. The sentence? 13 months in a private wing of a county facility, with work release, 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. And the no prosecution agreement didn't just protect Epstein, it protected any potential co-conspirators. That phrasing wasn't an accident. It was a shield, a legal force shield, for anyone who might have flown with him, visited the island, or participated in the trafficking operation. And here's where it gets even more disturbing. The victims were never told. They never saw the agreement. They were never given a chance to object. Their rights were violated under federal law, the Crime Victims' Rights Act. Why? Because if they had been told, they would have gone to the press, the courts, and the public. And the entire network would have been exposed 10 years earlier. But the secrecy wasn't just about the deal. It extended to every part of Epstein's life. When Palm Beach detectives raided his home, they found evidence everywhere. Photos, logs, messages, journals. But much of it disappeared during the handoff between the local authorities and the federal agencies. The message was clear. This case wasn't being mishandled. It was being managed. And it didn't stop in 2008. Even after Epstein served his short sentence, he was still protected. He moved freely. He traveled internationally. He violated probation repeatedly. He was photographed with powerful men. He continued operating in New York, where he should have been monitored but wasn't. In fact, one probation officer acknowledged that Epstein was too difficult to monitor because of his wealth and connections. That's not how the system works for regular people. It's how it works for men who have leverage over powerful institutions. And then came 2019, the moment when Epstein was arrested again. This time in New York. This time with national attention. This time with prosecutors claiming they would finally reveal the full picture. But even then, something was off. The FBI raided his home and found exactly what critics said they would be there. Documents, hard drives, photos, evidence of trafficking, evidence of a network. Things that should have existed in 2006 and mysteriously didn't. Then, as the case accelerated, the single most unbelievable chain of events unfolded. Epstein was placed in a high-security federal facility, the Metropolitan Correctional Center. a facility that houses terrorists, cartel leaders, and violent felons, with cameras everywhere, guards everywhere, protocols everywhere. And yet when Epstein died, every single safeguard failed at the exact same moment. The cameras facing his cell malfunctioned. The guards fell asleep. The security logs were inaccurate. The backup cameras weren't recording. The cellmate was removed hours before, and the one man who could have named everyone suddenly wasn't around to testify. The medical examiner ruled it a suicide, but multiple forensic experts, including one hired by Epstein's own brother, said the injuries were consistent with homicide. None of this happened by chance. Too many things had to go wrong at the exact same time. The cover-up didn't fail. It escalated. If Epstein had gone to trial, if he had talked, if he had testified under oath, the client list would have been public record. Depositions would have been public. Names would have been exposed, and nearly every institution tied to him would have suffered catastrophic damage. That couldn't happen, so something else did. This is why episode 4 matters so much, because if the deal was the beginning of the cover-up and the death was the end, then the island and the operations run there are the missing middle. It's where the network lived. It's where the victims were taken. It's where the truth becomes impossible to deny. If you want to keep going through this series, make sure you hit like, comment truth down below, and subscribe so you don't miss episode 4. Because in the next video, we're going to cover the island. And that's where the story stops being a mystery and starts becoming undeniable.